My name is Alex McGregor, and at 37, I've spent the last 12 years carving out a successful career in real estate development. It wasn't easy, but I worked relentlessly, long nights, weekends, early mornings, doing whatever it took to ensure Emma and I had everything we could ever want. A beautiful house in a quiet neighborhood, vacations in exotic places, the kind of lifestyle I'd always dreamed of providing. Emma, at 34, was the heart of our home. While I was out closing deals, she kept everything running smoothly. She was the one who kept our house immaculate, entertained our friends, and made sure I could focus on my work without worrying about anything else. For years, everything seemed perfect. We met at a luxury resort during a networking event for entrepreneurs. She was working as a freelance graphic designer, and there was something about her that caught my attention instantly. It wasn't just her looks, though they certainly played a part. It was the way she carried herself, a quiet confidence that drew me in. What really did it for me, though, was her laugh. It was genuine, full of life, and it made you feel like you had to laugh along, even if you didn't know what was so funny. I was drawn to her energy, to the way she made everything seem effortless. Within months of meeting, we moved in together. I was in love, and I thought I had found everything I needed in her. Our wedding was everything Emma had dreamed of, a small, intimate ceremony at a vineyard upstate, surrounded by our closest family and friends. I had just landed a huge development project, and money wasn't an issue. I wanted to give her the world, and I thought that by doing so, I was doing everything right. She quit her job after we got married, choosing to focus on making our home a place that reflected who we were. I didn't think much of it. After all, I was making more than enough to support us both. She threw dinner parties for my clients, keeping our social life thriving, and took care of the house like it was her personal project. Emma had always been the type to spend time on herself. Yoga classes, facials every 2 weeks, weekly spa visits, but I didn't mind. It was part of the life we had built, and I was happy to give her the space to do it. But over time, something began to shift. She started seeming more distant, like she was there physically but not emotionally. I told myself it was nothing, stress from managing everything maybe, but the distance was noticeable. I tried to ignore it. Maybe she was just overwhelmed by the pressure of running our household while I focused on my work. Things felt fine for a while until I installed security cameras around the house. The neighborhood had seen a rise in break-ins, and I wanted to be cautious. It was a simple setup, nothing extravagant, just a few cameras by the front door, in the backyard, and one by the pool. It felt like a sensible precaution, nothing more. I synced them to an app on my phone, and I'd occasionally check it, just to be sure everything was secure when I wasn't around. It was a Tuesday evening, about 2 weeks ago, when everything changed. I had been working late, finalizing a project proposal for a potential investor. It had been a long day, and I was exhausted. Around 9:30 p.m., I realized I'd left my laptop at home, so I pulled up the security app to check if Emma was still awake. The app opened to the backyard camera first. The pool lights were on, casting a soft, inviting glow over the water. And there, sitting by the pool, was a guy I didn't recognize, Jake Walker, casually lounging with a beer in hand. I stared at the screen, my heart beginning to race. Where was Emma? I clicked to the living room camera. Empty. I sat there for a few moments, waiting. Then Jake stood up, walked over to the pool, and jumped in. I felt a tightening in my chest. Emma had mentioned she was meeting some potential clients earlier in the day, but she hadn't said anything about Jake. I watched for a few more minutes, then pulled up more footage from earlier that week. To my horror, this wasn't the first time Jake had been in our pool. In fact, he'd been there almost every day for the past week. Sometimes he was alone, other times Emma was with him. They were laughing together, sitting close, touching each other in ways that made my stomach churn. I couldn't breathe. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at my phone screen. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to confront them immediately, but another part of me, the part of me that built my career on strategic decisions, knew I needed to be smarter than that. I had to be calm. I had to plan. So I waited. The next morning, I woke up in a haze. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't fully breathe. I got dressed and went to work as if everything was normal, but my mind was reeling. I couldn't focus on anything. Emails, phone calls, meetings, they all felt like background noise compared to what was running through my head. I spent most of the day trying to act like nothing had changed, trying to push down the anger and the hurt that were clawing at me. But I couldn't shake the image of Jake by the pool, of Emma laughing with him, of their intimacy spilling into every corner of my life. By lunchtime, I found myself sitting in my car in the parking lot, staring at my phone. My friend Ben's voice from the night before echoed in my mind. You need to document everything, Alex. Every detail, every piece of evidence. He'd been through a divorce himself, a messy one. He'd warned me about Emma's behavior before, though I'd brushed it off as him just being cynical. Maybe he was right. Maybe there had been signs that I was too blind to see. I dialed Ben's number. Ben, I need your help, I said when he picked up. I knew you'd call me about this, he replied without hesitation. What's going on? I explained everything. The footage, the discovery, the gut-wrenching realization that my wife had been cheating on me. I told him I felt paralyzed, unsure of what to do next. Ben was calm as always. First things first, you need to make sure you've got all the evidence. Don't confront her. Don't make any moves yet. You need to be smart. Trust me on this. I could hear the conviction in his voice, and I knew he was right. I had to be methodical. So I followed his advice. I spent the afternoon gathering everything I could, saving the footage from the cameras, going through our bank statements, checking credit card transactions. I found more evidence than I was prepared for. Small transfers, $200 here, $500 there, all moving to an account I didn't know existed. Emma had been siphoning money from our joint account for months, and it wasn't just small amounts. There were luxury purchases, designer clothes, expensive watches, jewelry I'd never seen her wear, all of it for Jake. That night, after dinner, I confronted Emma about the money transfers. I didn't mention Jake, not yet. I needed her to slip up. I asked about the unusual purchases and the unexplained withdrawals from our account. She became defensive immediately, dismissing it all with weak excuses. It's nothing, Alex, she said, her voice too high, her eyes avoiding mine. Just a few things I've been buying for myself. You wouldn't understand. I wanted to scream, to call her out on everything I had discovered, but I stayed calm. The anger was still simmering inside me, but I knew this wasn't the moment. If I acted now, if I let my emotions take over, I'd lose control of the situation. Instead, I made an appointment with a lawyer that Ben recommended. Her name was Sarah Lane, and she specialized in high-asset divorces. I explained the situation to her the next morning, going over everything I'd found. The footage, the financial misconduct, it was all part of the case. Sarah was sharp, efficient, and exactly what I needed. This is solid evidence, she said after reviewing everything. We can use this in your divorce case, but we need more. Phone logs, credit card statements, anything else that shows she's been planning this or hiding money. I spent the next few days becoming a detective in my own life. I gathered everything Sarah asked for, piecing together the puzzle of my wife's betrayal. The more I dug, the more disgusted I became. Emma wasn't just cheating on me. She was using my hard-earned money to fund her affair. She was betraying me not only emotionally, but financially. The thought of it made my blood boil. I felt like I was drowning in it, but I wasn't going to let her get away with this. One evening, after Emma went to bed, I made a decision. I wasn't just going to divorce her. I was going to make her feel the weight of her actions. I wasn't going to let her think she could get away with this without consequences. I knew it was petty, but I was beyond caring. I called a pool supply company and ordered a chemical compound designed for leak detection. The compound was harmless, but when it reacted with the chlorine and the body chemistry of a person who entered the pool, it turned the water a brilliant fluorescent green. The stain it left on the skin would last for days. It was a small thing, a simple thing, but it would send a message, one that no one could ignore. 2 days later, I sat in my office, watching the cameras as Jake arrived at our house, just like I knew he would. Emma was already outside, wearing a bikini I'd never seen before. They kissed by the pool, laughing together, and then Jake dove in. As soon as he hit the water, the reaction was instant. The pool water turned a bright green. Jake surfaced, and I watched, feeling a sick satisfaction as he looked down at his body, stunned, realizing the water wasn't coming off. Emma started screaming, running around the pool, trying to figure out what happened. Jake was frantically scrubbing himself, but the stain wouldn't come off. I couldn't help but laugh. It was perfect. I called Sarah. "It's done," I said, my voice tight with adrenaline. Jake's green, and the cameras caught it all. The next morning, I woke up with a strange calmness. The kind of calm that only comes after you've taken control of something that's been eating at you for too long. I got up, took a quick shower, and headed out for my usual routine, as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I couldn't ignore the way my heart raced whenever I thought about the green pool incident, or the satisfaction I felt knowing that I had made them pay, at least a little bit, for what they had done. But I knew this wasn't the end. It wasn't enough just to expose Jake. I needed to make sure that Emma understood there would be consequences, real, undeniable consequences, for what she had done. As I sat in my car outside the office, I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Today was the day. I had decided, after long deliberation, that I would serve Emma with divorce papers. I couldn't keep living this lie. I couldn't pretend anymore. The truth was out in the open now, and I had made sure she would never forget it. I wasn't going to drag this out. No more games. It was time for her to face the reality of her betrayal. I called Sarah first thing in the morning. "I'm ready," I said. "Let's do this." She was professional, as always. "I'll arrange for a process server to deliver the papers today. We'll serve her at home. The timing's critical, Alex. Make sure you're not there when it happens." I agreed. I didn't want to be there when she received the papers. I didn't want to witness her fake confusion, her desperate pleas for forgiveness. It would only make me sick. I had already seen enough of her lies. The evidence was irrefutable. I knew she wouldn't be able to talk her way out of this. At noon, my phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. "It's done." I closed my eyes for a moment, absorbing the weight of her words. She'd served Emma with the papers. She was officially going to lose everything. I spent the afternoon trying to keep myself busy, but my mind kept wandering back to what had just happened. What would Emma say when she found out? Would she beg? Would she act like she was the victim? I didn't know, and I wasn't sure I cared anymore. After everything, I had no sympathy left. She had done this to herself. I was just leaving the office when I got the call. It was from Sarah. "You need to see this," she said. I immediately felt a lump in my throat. What happened? Jake was there when the papers were served. He looked, "Well, you need to see it for yourself. He's not taking this well, Alex. Emma's flipping out. It's all on the cameras." A sick sense of satisfaction washed over me. I wanted to see it. I needed to see it. This wasn't just about Jake being stained with that green water anymore. This was about watching them face the consequences of what they'd done. I pulled up the camera feed from home, and there they were. Emma, standing in the doorway, holding the papers in her hand, looking as if her world had just crumbled. I could see her shaking, her face contorted in disbelief. Jake was beside her, his expression dark, his eyes wide as he processed what was happening. They weren't expecting this. They thought they could get away with it, but they hadn't. As the process server handed the papers to Jake, Emma looked like she was about to lose it. Her voice was barely audible through the camera, but I could still make out the words. "What is this? What's going on? Why is this happening?" She tried to reach for the papers, to take control of the situation, but the server handed them to Jake instead. He stood there, frozen, staring at the papers in his hands, his face slowly turning pale. The camera zoomed in on his green-stained skin, and I couldn't help but laugh. The irony wasn't lost on me. I watched as Emma's facade began to crack. "This is your fault, Jake," she screamed, her voice filled with desperation. "I told you we needed to be careful. Look what you've done. Look where we are now." The camera showed Jake's face, his lips trembling as he turned to her. "Emma, I didn't know it would end like this," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The entire situation felt surreal. There they were, two people who thought they could play me for a fool, who thought they could take everything from me without consequences. But life doesn't work that way. Not for me, not for them. Later that night, I received another call, this time from Sarah. "The papers have been served," she confirmed. "We've also frozen all joint accounts, so she won't be able to drain anything further." I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. Good. I replied. Let her see what happens when you betray someone who worked hard to make your life comfortable. After the call, I sat in my apartment thinking about everything that had led me here. The green pool, the footage, the texts, the money, all of it had been building toward this moment. I felt like I was finally starting to take my life back. But the anger still lingered. The betrayal still stung, and I knew I wasn't done. I would make sure Emma paid for what she had done to me, emotionally, financially, and every other way possible. This was just the beginning. And no matter how hard she fought, no matter how much she tried to manipulate the situation, I would come out on top. It was only a matter of time. The days following the delivery of the divorce papers felt like an eternity. I had expected Emma to react with anger, but I wasn't prepared for the level of desperation in her voice when she called me. She left a string of voicemails, each one more frantic than the last. Alex, please, we need to talk, she pleaded. This isn't what it seems. I made a mistake. I need you. I listened to each message, feeling nothing but a strange emptiness. I knew the words were empty, just a last-ditch effort to claw her way back into my life. She didn't regret what she had done. She regretted being caught. She regretted the consequences. But there was no going back for me. I had seen her true colors now. This wasn't the woman I'd married, the woman I had loved. That person was long gone. I didn't respond to her messages. I couldn't. If I gave her an inch, she'd take a mile, and I wasn't about to let her manipulate me again. Instead, I focused on the next steps. Sarah had recommended freezing our joint accounts, and I did so immediately. I wasn't about to let Emma drain anything else from our shared finances, especially after what I'd found. The $18,000 she transferred, the expensive gifts, the secret account, she thought she could get away with it. I wasn't about to make it easy for her. Then came the lawyers. Emma hired a high-priced divorce attorney, someone who clearly thought the world revolved around her. The lawyer's first move was to try to get me to settle for a more favorable arrangement for Emma, but I wasn't budging. The evidence was on my side. The affair, the financial misconduct, it was all there. But her lawyer, unsurprisingly, tried to paint me as the villain. They tried to make it seem like I had been neglecting Emma, working too much, not giving her the attention she deserved. It was the same tired excuse they always fall back on. I didn't care. I wasn't playing their game. We went through months of back-and-forth negotiations. I kept my cool, though inside I was seething. Each new tactic they tried made me more determined. I wasn't going to let her walk away with half of what I had built, not after everything she had done. Every time she tried to manipulate the process, I countered with evidence. The footage, the bank records, the texts between her and Jake. I had everything I needed to make sure the courts saw her for who she truly was. But it wasn't just about the legal battle. Every time I had to see her or talk to her, even through lawyers, I felt a sickening sense of betrayal. It was like she had been living two lives for so long that she couldn't even tell the truth anymore. The anger I felt was still there, simmering beneath the surface, and I knew I couldn't let it control me. One morning, about 3 months after the papers were served, I got a call from Sarah. "We've got a settlement offer," she said. "It's not everything, but it's a step in the right direction. She's willing to give up the house and most of the assets if you agree to a 2-year spousal support agreement. I think we can push for more, but this is a decent starting point." I was silent for a moment, weighing the options. "Push for more," I finally said. "She doesn't deserve an easy out." Sarah's voice was calm, but I could hear the understanding in her tone. "I agree. Let's make sure she pays for what she's done, legally and financially." I felt a sense of relief, knowing we were finally moving toward a resolution. Emma wanted out of this, but she also wanted to make sure she was taken care of. I wasn't about to let her walk away with the life she had come to expect, especially after everything she'd done. A week later, the settlement agreement was finalized. Emma walked away with far less than she had hoped. No house, no hefty alimony. She got her car, some personal belongings, and a few pieces of furniture. The $18,000 she'd stolen was deducted from her share, and that felt like the only small victory I had in this whole process. The day Emma moved out was the day I finally felt like I could breathe again. I stood in the driveway as she loaded boxes into the back of her rental truck, my emotions as empty as the space she was leaving behind. When she walked past me, she looked at me with bitterness in her eyes. "I hope you're happy," she muttered, her voice dripping with contempt. I looked at her for a moment, then responded without hesitation, "Getting there." And for the first time in months, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I didn't feel anger anymore. I didn't feel sadness. I felt free. The life I had built with Emma was gone, but it had been replaced with something far more valuable: peace. As Emma drove away, I walked back into the house. It felt different now, lighter, like it was finally mine again. I didn't look back. There was no reason to. I had rebuilt my life, piece by piece, and this time I was going to do it on my own terms. It wasn't easy, and I knew the scars would take time to heal. But with each passing day, I was getting closer to the person I used to be, the man who could trust again, the man who had worked so hard to build a life. And I knew that, in time, I'd find someone who deserved me, someone who would never betray that trust. But for now, I had my peace, and that was enough. 6 months had passed since Emma moved out, and I'd finally started to feel like myself again. The initial shock, the anger, the overwhelming sense of betrayal, those emotions had started to fade into something softer, something I could manage. I moved into a new apartment in the city, far away from the house Emma and I had shared. It wasn't that the old house was a painful reminder of what I had lost. It was just that it felt like a chapter that had closed, and I wasn't looking back. I didn't want to keep living in a place that had been part of a life that no longer existed. The new apartment was small but comfortable, modern, and clean. Everything I needed to start fresh. I didn't need a big house or fancy things anymore. I just needed to rebuild. Work had been a welcome distraction. The real estate development company I had built from the ground up was thriving. My career had always been something I was passionate about, but I had never realized how much it had taken a backseat to my personal life until now. With Emma gone and the divorce behind me, I poured all my energy into my business. I closed several major deals that I had been working on before everything fell apart, and my team grew. It was strange, in a way. My success had always been for Emma, for us. But now it was for me. I didn't need to share it with anyone. I didn't need anyone to validate it. It was mine. Then, one evening, about 2 months ago, I met Sophie. It wasn't some grand love story, no instant spark, no fireworks. It happened casually. I was attending a networking event for a new real estate project, and she was there, talking to some of the same people I knew. Sophie was a financial consultant, a fellow professional in the real estate world. We hit it off over dinner, chatting about industry trends, market forecasts, and for once, it felt refreshing to talk to someone who wasn't wrapped up in my past. No baggage, no history, just two people having a conversation. We exchanged numbers, and over the next few weeks, we spoke often. It wasn't a rush. We went to coffee, had dinner, talked more about our work and less about our personal lives. She knew about my divorce, but I didn't feel like I had to explain it. Sophie had her own past, her own stories of relationships gone wrong, and I liked that. She didn't judge me. She didn't feel sorry for me. We just connected, and that felt easy. That was the first time I realized how much I had missed something that simple, a connection without the weight of expectations or drama. One afternoon, after a long week of back-to-back meetings and site visits, Sophie and I decided to take a hike in the hills just outside the city. It wasn't planned. We just decided to take a break from our usual routine and do something different. We didn't talk much on the way up. The weather was perfect, the sun warm but not too hot. It was peaceful. Sophie pointed out the wildflowers, and we joked about getting lost, but neither of us cared. It was just nice to be in the moment, without thinking about the past or the future. When we reached the top, the view was breathtaking. Everything stretching out beneath us, the city in the distance, the mountains rising up behind it. For the first time in a long time, I felt content. Sophie turned to me and smiled. "This was exactly what I needed," she said, and I couldn't help but agree. I didn't say anything at first, just took in the view, feeling the wind against my skin. Then, without thinking, I turned to her. "I'm glad you're here," I said. The words surprised me. I hadn't realized how much I'd meant them until I said them out loud. She looked at me for a long moment, her eyes searching mine, like she was seeing something more than just the words. "Me too," she said softly. And then, right there, with the city sprawling beneath us and the wind in the air, I asked her the question that had been on my mind for weeks. "Sophie, would you—" I didn't finish the sentence. I didn't need to. She was already nodding before I could ask, and as she reached for my hand, I knew. I didn't need grand gestures or perfect timing. I just needed honesty, and Sophie offered that in spades. I realized then that I had spent so much time running away from the past, from the hurt, from the betrayal. But with her, it felt like I was running toward something, toward a future that was mine to build, one where I could trust again, where I could love again, without the shadows of what had come before. Later that evening, after a quiet dinner at a small restaurant with candles on the table, Sophie and I talked more. We talked about what we wanted out of life, out of a relationship. We didn't need promises or commitments. We just needed to understand each other. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was with someone who genuinely wanted the same things as me. I wasn't looking for perfection. I wasn't looking for the life I had once had. I was looking for peace. And for the first time since Emma left, I felt like I had found it. As we sat there, talking and laughing, I realized that sometimes the best way to heal isn't to erase the past, but to make room for something new, something real. And for the first time in a long time, I was ready to embrace whatever came next. It's funny how much life can change in a year. A year ago, I was drowning in anger and betrayal, struggling to put one foot in front of the other after everything with Emma. Now, sitting here, with Sophie beside me, I could feel a quiet sense of peace that had taken me a long time to find. It wasn't just the new apartment or the success I was having in business, or even the way Sophie made me laugh with her dry humor. It was everything. It was the sense that I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. Sophie and I had been seeing each other more seriously over the past few months. It had been natural, no rush, no pressure. Just us getting to know each other, enjoying each other's company without all the baggage I'd carried around for so long. It felt like the world was wide open again, like the future was something I could shape without fear of what had happened before. We spent weekends exploring the city, hiking when the weather was right, cooking dinner together, or just binge-watching shows until we fell asleep on the couch. But every day felt like a fresh start. I wasn't looking for her to fix me, or to make up for the mistakes of my past. Sophie had her own life, her own history, but with her, everything felt easy. I wasn't trying to be someone else, someone I thought I should be. I was just me, and for the first time, I was okay with that. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much I had changed over the past year. When Emma left, I thought I'd never get over the pain of her betrayal. The emotional scars were deep, and for months I thought I'd carry them with me forever. But somehow, through all the mess and the anger, I'd come out the other side. It hadn't been a straight path, and it hadn't been easy, but I had rebuilt myself, piece by piece. One evening, after a long day at work, Sophie and I were sitting in my apartment, sipping wine, when I realized I had been holding on to something I didn't need anymore. I was looking at the ring I had bought for Emma when we were still in the early stages of our marriage. It had been a symbol of everything I thought we were building, everything I thought she was. But it had always been tied to a version of me that no longer existed. I looked at Sophie, who was sitting across from me, talking about a new project at work. She was animated, passionate about her career, and I couldn't help but admire the way she carried herself. She had her own dreams, her own ambitions, and I respected that more than anything. I hadn't realized until then how much I'd grown, how much I'd healed. And for the first time, I felt ready to let go of the past completely. "Hey, Sophie," I said, cutting off her story mid-sentence. She looked up, surprised by the change in tone. "What's up?" I hesitated, feeling a strange weight in my chest. "I need to get rid of something. It's been sitting in my drawer for months, and I've been holding on to it for no reason." She raised an eyebrow, but her smile didn't falter. "What is it?" I reached into the drawer beside the couch and pulled out the ring. I held it between my fingers, feeling the cool metal against my skin. For a moment, I just stared at it, the memories of that time rushing back. The wedding, the promises, the life we thought we would build. And then I realized those weren't the memories I needed anymore. They were just ghosts of something that had never been what I thought it was. I don't need this anymore, I said, holding it out to her. It's a reminder of a life I'm not living anymore, a life that's gone. Sophie looked at the ring, her eyes softening, before taking it gently from my hand. She didn't say anything, but I could see the understanding in her eyes. She wasn't trying to fix me or console me. She was just there, accepting me for where I was, not who I had been. I think that's a good step, she said quietly, placing the ring down on the coffee table. It's your life now, Alex. No need to carry the past with you. And in that moment, I knew she was right. I didn't need to carry the weight of Emma's betrayal or the hopes and dreams tied to that old version of myself. It wasn't just about letting go of the ring. It was about letting go of the fear, the anger, the hurt that had kept me anchored to something that was never meant to be. Sophie reached out, taking my hand in hers. I'm proud of you, she said softly, and I'm glad I'm here to see it. I squeezed her hand, a genuine smile spreading across my face. Me too, I said, realizing that, for the first time in a long time, I was truly ready to embrace what was next. No more looking back, just forward. And with Sophie by my side, I felt like I could take on whatever came my way. In that moment, everything felt right. Life has a way of throwing unexpected challenges our way, but the key to moving forward is resilience. When faced with betrayal or hardship, it's important to allow yourself time to heal, but also to actively choose to let go of the past. Surround yourself with people who support and understand you, and don't be afraid to rebuild from the ground up. Trust takes time, and it's okay to start fresh. Remember, healing isn't linear. Take each day as it comes. Embrace the lessons, find peace within yourself, and never let your past define your future.